game changer for me because it makes sure that no matter how my business does, if profits or not, I still don't lose personally.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Now come on now.
What's up, icons? It's the iconic fashion figure. Just recently, I read this book called Profit First, and it has been game changer for me. It's something I wish I knew about when I first started my business, but I'm at least gonna share with you guys, especially those of you that are just starting, so that way you can do it now. I feel like it'll help eliminate that fear of losing out for those of you that are afraid to start your business because you're afraid that you won't be able to make it, especially financially. So let's talk about Profit First. So basically, Profit First is a concept to make sure you always pay yourself first versus the normal way that we tend to think about things, and we cover our expenses first and then whatever is left over we pocket as profit. So the traditional formula for most businesses is usually whatever revenue you bring in, you deduct your expenses, and what's left after your expenses is normally your profit, right? We usually would take what's left over as our profit. But with Profit First, it means exactly what it's saying, where we're going to take our profit first, and then what's left over will be the expenses. So the formula with Profit First, it works as whatever revenue you bring in, you deduct your profit, and then what's left over after you take your profit is what you'll use for expenses. So in the book, the author recommends that you open up different bank accounts. So I would say 5 different bank accounts. And I know it might sound like a lot, but it actually is very helpful, especially like trying to figure out where your money is going to in your business, how you're spending your money. Having it in separate bank accounts, you'll know automatically. I mean, yeah, you can run reports if you have accounting software and determine that way, but this makes it so much easier. So that first bank account you'll open is one that you probably have already opened if you're starting a business, and that you'll use for your revenue. So that's where all your money will come in for all the sales that you're making. Any income your business is making, it'll go into the revenue account. And then from there, you'll have 4 separate accounts where you're going to break down that money and transfer it to these different accounts. And there's percentages that you can use to determine how much should go in each account. So I'll put that on the screen because the percentages have been broken down for you based off how much you're making in your business. I'll focus on the percentages that are for new businesses, for those of you that are starting out, which would mean you're making less than $250K a year. So that next bank account, after your revenue bank account, you'll be opening your profit account. And this is where we're going to take our profit off what we sold and move it into the profit account. So for beginning businesses, it's recommended to take about 5%. You can switch up these percentages based off what works best for you, but this is just a recommendation to give you an idea of how much to flow into each account. So in the beginning, it's recommended about 5%. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but you're going to see why in a moment. So once you have that second bank account, your profit account, we're going to go into the third account. And that third account is going to be to pay yourself. You as the owner need to make sure you pay yourself. And in the beginning, I know I said this whole concept makes sure that you never lose, because you're going to make sure you're paying yourself, so that way your personal living expenses and whatever you need to cover is paid. Because at the end of the day, you have to survive too. And let's say you have a business that isn't working out, at least you got your money out of it and you're covered yourself. Your business, hopefully you registered it as a separate entity so it doesn't affect you personally, so the business would just take the loss, but at least you're not struggling personally because you paid yourself. And that recommended percentage to pay yourself in the beginning is 50%. So that's why the profit percent is only 5, because 50% is going into your pockets to make sure you're paying yourself and your bills are covered and you're able to eat. You got to think about you. This concept is kind of selfish, but in a sense we have to, because we still have to survive, and as entrepreneurs we're taking major risks by starting our businesses. So in the beginning you'll put in 50% into your personal bank account, or I would say into the payroll account, and you'll see why I say payroll account in a little bit. But that next account, so account number 4, I would say make that your taxes account. I'm going to put taxes before any other expenses just because we have to pay the IRS and nobody wants the IRS knocking at their door looking for their money. So that 4th account is going to be taxes, and no matter how much money you make, it's recommended to put 15% into the taxes account. That's usually usually about how much you would pay in federal taxes, but of course if you have deductions and things like that in your taxes, you might have money left over in that account, but to be safe, 15%. And that fifth and final account is going to be your operating expenses. So like your rent, anything like that, any overhead for inventory, those type of things, any expense that you need to operate your business, that'll be the fifth and final account, the operating expenses. And in the beginning, you're looking at putting in about 30% of your money going into the operating expense account. So I know some of you are probably thinking this idea may not be the best, considering if you give all the money to yourself and to your profit account, all these other accounts, and your expenses aren't covered, then you have no business. And that might be true. If you don't have the money to operate your business, you don't have a business. But this method to me forces you to hustle even harder, because how is your business going to stay afloat if you don't have the money to operate? So now you need to figure something out and figure out what's going on and what you need to do to make sure you have that money to go into the operating expenses account, and that account has enough money to cover your business. And then on that chart that I was showing, as you can see, the more money you make, the percentages will change. So the amount you would put into your profit account will begin to increase, whereas the money you're putting into payroll or to pay yourself would typically decrease. But I, instead of calling it to pay yourself account, I call it the payroll account, because you will most likely have employees too that you'll want to hire, especially as you grow. And you want to make sure your employees are paid as well and they're covered. You don't want to be that business that can't pay your employees or their checks end up bouncing. So I would say the payroll account instead of the pay yourself account, so you can cover your employees as well. And then the way I like to look at it too, once you have that money into the payroll account, and let's say the payroll account has more money in there each month than what you need to cover payroll. So now you have a surplus of money in the payroll account. You can then decide in that payroll account what you want to do with that money. Maybe you need more employees. You're going to hire additional help. Or maybe you need to give your current employees raises. So now you can see you have that money sitting there. So now you can pay them more as well, or pay yourself more as well. Or maybe you can start moving that money into another account to cover a different expense. Now, when it comes to the profit account, because I'm sure you guys are wondering, so once that money goes into the profit account, what do you do with it? Now, when it comes to the profit account, once that money goes in there, it's almost like open money. It's not scheduled to pay anything, but you determine what it is you want to do with it. Maybe you do want to take your profit and now cover your expenses because you're short. Or maybe you're at a phase where you're trying to grow your business and you have that profit sitting there. You can take your profit and put towards growing your business. Or maybe you get a higher tax bill because you only put in 15%, but that year maybe you had to pay a little more, or some unexpected expense came up. You can use the money in your profit account to cover those expenses. So there are different things that you can use the profits for, but that's for you to decide. You just want to make sure that you always achieve a profit in your business and that you're always paying yourself, and all the other stuff you'll figure out later. This concept might sound crazy to some of you. Some of you may be scared to try it, but when I read this book, trust me, read this book for yourself rather than hearing me explain it. I just kind of explained it in a nutshell, but read that book, or even there's an audio version too, so you can do the audio book also. Listen to it, really understand this concept, because to me it's genius, and I can't believe that I didn't learn about this sooner, because it's actually helped me. I've switched over to this and it's helped me a lot, because I always got money in my pocket regardless of what my business is doing. If there's ever a point where my expenses aren't covered, you can call those companies of your bills and ask for additional time to pay it. Determine on which bills are due when and pay them when necessary, and as the money is coming in, then you pay. Bills you can figure out. Bills are always going to be there. Those expenses aren't going anywhere. So yes, I'm going more with the profit first method, and I'm loving it so far. If any of you try it, make sure you come back and comment. Let me know how the profit first method works for you. That's it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching.